How's it going, Reef Keepers? So this is my clownfish anemone tank, and doing a little spotlight on this tank today because it's having a pretty serious bubble algae problem. I don't know that I'd call it, crazy serious yet, but you can see that in all of the cracks and seams in the rock, all the little, protected zones where it likes to pinch itself and grow, I've basically got little seams of bubble algae popping up. And bubble algae is exceedingly common in the reef hobby. So if you're a new reefer and somehow bubble algae got in your tank, by the way, you can, put a new coral in your tank and there were spores on it. And I'm not quite sure of the coral dip's effect on bubble algae, but it's conceivable that spores were just hiding in a perfectly clean, or so you thought, frag that you put in your tank, and suddenly you've got bubble algae popping up. So don't panic like, you did something wrong. It happens, and there are a few different ways to go about, mitigating it or slowing it down. But when you look up ways to treat bubble algae, there's a couple of words that always pop up with any article that you find on it, and they're two words that every reefer hates to read when they look up how do I get something out of my tank that I don't want in my tank, and those two words are manual removal. So I know I hate reading those words, and manual removal is unfortunately a pretty effective way of dealing with bubble algae. It requires you, getting your hands dirty, but I'm going to show you real quick if my camera will cooperate. I'm just going to hold it to the glass right here, right in front of this little bunch of bubble algae right here. And I'll put my hand in and just kind of show you guys that, like, you can see it already kind of flaking. And you can just push the bubbles free, and it'll, look, see that? You can just dislodge it like this. See, there's a floater right there. And then you just take your tongs and you pick out the little bits that come free when you're doing that. Now, and look, like where it was in the tank, let me allow this to adjust. You can see there's clean rock underneath. Now, of course, it can't just be that easy. There's got to be a catch. And the catch is that as bubble algae is currently understood, when you are pulling it free, you are inevitably going to pop some of these bubbles. They're not super strong, okay? And when you pop them, again, as it's currently understood, it releases algae spores into the water column, which then reseed the algae. So it's like, taking a step forward, but then unbeknownst to you, you're also taking steps back. So this is one way to knock it back and knock down, the visible, big growths in your tank. But most likely, unless you're somehow exceedingly careful, you are probably going to inadvertently start reseeding your tank with it. So there's a couple of other things that you can do for this. Now, the bubble algae I've got in this tank, there was a little bit of it that was struggling to gain a foothold. And then to help the health of this anemone that I've got in this tank, I upped my lighting intensity, and I also lengthened the lighting schedule on the tank, and then the bubble algae really took off. So bubble algae is known to thrive in low light and in high light situations. In my case, I think it wasn't so much the raising the intensity of the lighting as it was lengthening the light span over the course of the day. So to slow it down, I suppose you can shorten up your lighting schedule. I don't suggest that, especially if everything's going well in your tank. There's mixed results if you look on the forums about, taking measures like that. One measure you could take, and I have personally found this to be like a 50-50 success rate, is adding an emerald or, for UK viewers, a Mithrax crab to your tank. They are said in the hobby to be, prolific eaters of bubble algae, much the same way that bumblebee snails are said to be prolific eaters of vermitid snails. I don't put a ton of stock in the lights out success factor of doing this because I've had mixed results. One time on a 25-gallon tank a few years ago, I dropped an emerald crab in, and it absolutely decimated the bubble algae. And I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is the solve. Well, I got it again, a couple years later, and 2 different emerald crabs. When one didn't work, I tried a second. Really didn't touch the stuff. I mean, I would have been hard pressed to find a time that it was, even adjacent to the bubble algae in the tank. It had no interest. Neither of them did. So, you can try it and hopefully you'll get lucky, but the final way that a lot of people deal with bubble algae, or so, I mean, I haven't personally talked to people, but I've seen on the forums that a lot of people do a heavy dose of Reef flux, right? A heavy fluconazole dose to their tank. I've used it on my tank for bryopsis, and I actually, take it with a, grain of, a bit of caution, because I put too much in my tank and it caused all of my snails to flip upside down and not be able to right themselves. I broke their little gyroscopes, and I had to do a massive water change to decrease the amount of fluconazole in the water so that the snails would right themselves and I didn't lose, a couple $100 in snails. So you can use too much of it, and unfortunately most people say that to kill bubble algae, which is very resilient algae, you need to basically overdose fluconazole. So if you're gonna do that, I have not done that for bubble algae yet. I may do that experiment on this tank if this bubble algae continues to propagate in here and spread. I'll document it if I do, but if you choose to go that route, just proceed with caution, right? For sure. One thing I would not do is pour a bottle of snake oil in your tank. Bubble algae Instafix by whoever, Dr. Reef Keeping's special mixture. Please don't. Please. And also, I'm kind of an anti-vibrant guy. I've used Vibrant before, and it takes a long time to kill bubble algae. And also, it really, I could tell that it had a negative effect on the tank overall. It's not like the tank crashed or anything from Vibrant, but I just, everything seemed to, not be fully healthy. I could just tell. When you've had a tank a while, you can tell. So don't just default to dumping a bottle of something in your tank and crossing your fingers. Don't do that, right? Don't panic. This stuff doesn't move at lightning speed. It's not going to, overtake your tank completely in the course of a couple weeks like a horrendous hair algae outbreak, could if you have a bad enough nutrient situation. This stuff will take a while, but, it doesn't take away from the fact that you don't want it in your tank. It's no fun. And, you want to stay on top of it and keep tabs on it and look at all your options. So hopefully this video gives reefers, especially new reefers, some knowledge of options they could take or things that they could look into more for taking care of it. But if you have any questions, please let me know, and hope everybody's having a great week. Have a good one.